The day I met a blind man, it was a warm summer day, 3 years ago to this date. I had just gotten out of school and was ready to return home and rest from the tiring day I had left behind. I walked out from the brick building, not even bothering to hold the door for those behind me. I was waiting for my mom to pick me up on the sidewalk, sweating and wishing she would get here sooner. She was late, as per usual. It was probably 3:30 when I was sitting on my phone, propping my head up with my hand. I looked across the sidewalk to see a young man with a walking stick. He couldn't have been more than 30 years of age, but his glasses hid many of his features. He walked across the road and approached my way. I looked back down, not interested. Then, I felt a small tap on my worn sneakers. I looked up, and there he was. His skin was dark, kissed by the summer sun rays. "Sorry," he said, his voice rough and scratchy, but in a comforting way, like how my dad sounds after smoking a cigar. "Not a problem." I smiled at him, before realizing he obviously couldn't recognize it. He took a seat next to me on the curb. I scooted away, knowing not to talk to strangers. His teeth were a little yellow with age, like he may have skipped brushing them every now and then. He smelled of pine trees and sweat. "What's a girl like you doing here?" he asked. I was hesitant to start a conversation, but he seemed harmless enough to me. "Oh, I just got out of school." He gave me a toothy smile. "I remember my schooling days. Some of the best of my life, I tell you," I scoffed. "School sucks." He laughed at my response and began on a tangent about how much you learn in school and why it's so good for you. I texted my mom asking how close she was. My text didn't go through to her. In fact, my data seemed to go out. He turned to me. "There's no reason to fear me, you know." I was immediately taken aback. "What do you mean?" "You're scared of me. I can sense it." I was confused. He truly didn't scare me. He was just a little weird is all. "You don't," I said. "Well, of course I don't, but I know I do," he said. "What's the difference?" He took off his glasses and revealed his face. It seemed to glow. His nose was rather large, but shaped like a ski slope. His eyes had crow's feet tucked in the corner of them. But what was most amazing was his eyes themselves. They were black, but with specks of gold and white within. I quickly got up to run, but my body was completely frozen. "See, I know you'd be scared of me." "What the hell?" I cried. He shushed me gently and folded his hands in his lap. "I'm rather misunderstood, you see. No one likes to listen to my story." I stayed quiet, feeling under his spell. "Would you like me to tell it?" For some reason, I nodded my head. He sat quiet for a moment before his head dropped to look at his hands. "It was many years ago, the day he picked me from Earth. I don't know why or how it happened, but it did." "Who?" "Him. You know, the one with the capital H." I understood. "Well, I was walking home from another bender, not knowing where I was, or honestly who I was. It was a pretty dark time in my life. I didn't have anyone to call, anyone to pick me up, anyone to care. You see, I was a pretty lonely guy back then." He stayed quiet a moment, reflecting on a life I could not see. "Well, anyways, there was this pretty young woman who walked up to my bus stop. She looked like an angel to me. Pretty curly hair that looked like it was spun from the sun. And her eyes, the prettiest green eyes I've ever seen in my life. Well, so she approached me and struck up a conversation. I could tell she was tired from the bags under her eyes, but that didn't stop her from talking to a weary man like me. Well, we got to talking and I told her all about myself, my addictions, my crimes, My sins. He laughed a minute. I really didn't think I'd ever see her again. Well, that's when I realized the bus should have come 15 minutes ago. I mentioned this to her, and she went all quiet. It was bizarre. What next? I asked, now invested in the blind man's story. Well, that's when she told me a story about herself, much like what I'm telling you, but much more complicated. I'm not exactly allowed to tell it, but never mind that. Well, I asked her what she was doing here, talking to a man like me. She told me she chose me for something big. That's when it all stopped. Everything went dark. I awoke in a white room with flowers and a small TV. I assumed I landed myself in the hospital again. But that's when she appeared. She told me I was chosen to be it, the one who takes them away. What's it? I asked. That's what I'm getting to, if you would hush up. He gave me a disapproving look. I shut my mouth instantly. Well, I'd darn well been chosen to be it. Some people call me evil, some a mercy, but most people call me death. Now, don't get scared yet. I began to panic. I wasn't ready to go. See, I said you'd be scared of me. Why are you here? I asked, my words trembling. Well, kid, I was supposed to take you today. But what? I screamed. He put on his glasses, hiding his eyes once more. I guess I just didn't see you. After all, I am only a blind man. And with that, he got up and walked away.